Super Senpai Podcast. Welcome to the Super Senpai Podcast. This is a bi-weekly, episodic, tokusatsu-related podcast where we're hecka excited about mecha. I'm Pat.
And I'm Grant. And we're here again to watch Lupinranger versus Patranger. Yet again, it's us two paving the way, watching the Super Sentai. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good, man. I've kind of had a dry spell when it comes to Toku, so I'm excited to get back into it. I'm so behind on it. We're behind on everything, it feels like. Like, I'm so behind on build. I'm like more than 10 episodes behind on build. It's bad.
Whoa. Oh, okay. Jeez, I was feeling pretty bad. I'm like 3 or 4 episodes behind, but you have... Whew. Thankfully, I'm not the one that's furthest behind. I mean, I'm so sorry for your loss. No, behind kind of on everything. Life is happening.
Yeah.
A great deal of life is occurring right now. But hey, we're still here. We're still recording. I'm excited to. It really feels like I've been watching Power Rangers, of course, still a little bit, just because it's easier to have that on, because I don't have to read subtitles. But it'll be nice to get back. I'm excited.
Definitely.
But before we get back, and we're going to watch episodes 23 and 24 tonight.
Yes.
Before we do that, we wanted to talk a little bit news-wise, because it is news, even though we know very little of it. So we have seen just the slightest bit, the slightest teaser for the next Kamen Rider Z-O. Now, am I saying that right? It looks like Z-O, but that doesn't guarantee that it's said like Z-O.
I feel like it's going to be G-O when they actually say it, but I'm not 100% sure.
Of course it is.
Well,
because they're messing with
it. Well,
it's always a roll of the dice. I can never tell what I'm actually getting.
Yeah, because I mean, if I'm thinking, I might be getting this wrong, but I think G is another way to say time, and it's like time king.
Okay.
It's like time travel related. There's a what? Okay, so we've seen the design, right? We've seen
he's got a watch band down the center of his chest.
Yeah, just straight up wristwatch. I love it. We got the clock face eyes,
Yeah, I think the thing I love is that the hands are the sort of the cricket, the ears, they're the antennae, if you will. I really dig that. Yeah. That's that's beautiful.
So what we understand is this is the sort of end of the Heisei era Rider. So it's sort of not exactly an anniversary series, but we're going to do kind of a retrospective, I think.
Yeah, time travel makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. So that's exciting. I'm pumped. I don't. I was gonna go into this saying I don't care if it's Decade Junior, but I will take a Decade Junior because I had fun with Decade. Darn it!
Yeah. Well, I'm sure. I mean, from the preview images, at least I've seen one that involved a lot of past writers, so I'm sure Decade will make an appearance. I mean, wouldn't it be fun if every episode, or if they did two-parters, and every single two-parter involved a prior writer from a prior series? Wouldn't that be fun?
Oh boy,
I think
that sounds like Decade. I think more evidence for this is Decade's sort of a bigger image on the poster, like the official poster, than the other mains. But we'll see when we actually get there.
Yeah, but I mean, it's exciting. It's always exciting. Let's be real with ourselves. That's part of why we're here, right? We like to see cool looking superheroes in cool looking suits. So just seeing the new suit is exciting in and of itself. But.
You get to dig up, we'll see monster types, dig up old monster types, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in.
All right, well, other than that, are we ready to hop into 23 and 24 for Lupinranger and Patranger? Do we recall where we last left our heroes? We know that our dual rangers showed up, right? Is it Ranger X, or am I thinking Racer X from Speed Racer? God, it's amazing what you can forget in 2 or 3 weeks.
I know, it's bad. I can't even remember. Yeah, I can't. Was it? Nope. I don't remember the exact name.
I'm going to call him Ranger
That's
X
terrible.
and then later be very embarrassed.
It's Ranger X on one side, but then it's Sentai X on the other side.
But of course.
Is that how it works? This is totally not remembering.
Yeah, this is us. We're freestyling. No, but he's shown up and he is playing both sides. And that's really kind of it. He seems to be trying to help both, sort of equally help and deceive both teams. But other than that, I don't feel like we have too much else to go on. But we'll see what we get.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so let's watch that show.
Let's do it.
この番組は楽しい時を作るグループ PRT とザ・コミックフィンドとご覧のスポンサーの提供でお送りします。
And we're back. So that was man, we got a lot more time hanging out with Lupin X, Panto X this time. How you feeling? What do you think?
I really enjoyed both of those episodes. It was nice to do a bit of a. I mean, it's a cliffhanger, which we'll get into. But it was nice to have a pair of episodes that were sort of a two-parter and had some continuity between them. Makes it a little bit easier to discuss and kind of have a longer thread for once, which I really enjoyed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you want to do a quick rundown of ye old episodes and we'll get into it?
Yeah. So the first episode was kind of a Lupin X, Lupin Blue team-up episode. We didn't really even see the Patrangers in that one. They kind of showed up for like a couple of little things. We were introduced to kind of like a group of upstarts that are trying to take over the gang.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a cow dude, a kiwi dude, and like a wolf, I guess, or a lion.
Limon,
it's
Kiwi,
a lion.
and Ushibarak?
Ushibarak, yeah. So Ushibarak was...
That's it. I'm tapped out memory-wise for like 10 episodes.
Yeah, you got it. That's it. So Ushibarak was capturing chefs and then making them like do cooking battles with him.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately Lupin Blue went in as bait and then challenged him and then won. And then I guess if you win or lose, you get killed by Ushibarak.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of got to see a little bit of Lupin X's abilities because apparently he said that since Lupin Blue's profession is to be a cook, or that's sort of where he looked at home, his profession was maintaining the Lupin collection. So he actually has the ability to repair the Lupin collection items.
Right. Which makes sense. He made them, so
yeah,
that tracks.
Right.
Or was at least involved in their development.
Yeah, and we got a team up mecha fight. We got to see some hard suits of the, what is it called? I can't remember what it's called. Ex-Emperor.
Yeah, Ex-Emperor, yeah.
Yeah, Ex-Emperor and Lupin Kaiser taking down Ushibarak after he gets brought back.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the second episode, or number 24, we kind of got like a Lupin Red and Patranger Sango? A Patranger Pink, kind of like a focus episode on them, like
yeah, it was like the last episode. 23 was definitely a friendship episode. This one was like a light friendship episode, just a touch,
yeah, because they kind of interacted and they have similar pasts where their parents were both killed when they were young or both died when they were young, and while he was raised by his brother, she was raised by her grandfather. I don't know what he took from that, from that encounter, that experience. But I guess maybe it strengthened Lupin Red's resolve a little bit. And sort of the overarching thing with Giwi, the sort of death doctor, what do you call it? Plague doctor mask.
Yeah, the plague
/
doctor, yeah.
Kiwi colored thing. There was like a kind of not drug, but like a club with drugs that you.
He was definitely a dealer.
Yeah.
He was a dealer in a club, and so your first thought is, oh, he's dealing narcotics, but it's just those little luck pendants.
Yeah, I mean, it's effectively the same thing. You get addicted to luck, you keep using it, use it up, and then you get turned into a happy little tree, which was a delight to see. And I think even at the end, we're like, no, don't kill Giwi this episode. He's so weird. They're kind of cool to look at. He had like a really cool effect, but we'll get into that later. So, I mean, ultimately, they beat him. They sort of used the luck ability against him because they weren't able to shoot him normally or attack him normally.
Yeah, the big thing being Lupin Red's using the pendant. Well, Pat Pink figures out, hey, why don't we use the luck pendant? Like, she resolves to use the luck pendant to actually score some blows on him. Lupin Red goes, hey, that's a great idea, but he snatched it from her and he does it himself, rather than let her take that sacrifice.
Right. So ultimately they win, and sort of this time the Patrangers jump into Pat Kaiser and team up with Ex-Emperor, and then they defeat the revived version of Giwi, and then sort of right as about where we expect things are gonna wind down. Lymon, the leader of their little gang, like shows up fully formed and then just like brutalizes both ex-Emperor and Pat Kaiser. Oh, and then something I didn't mention is Cowboy Absolute Zero shows up again as sort of like a parallel to Lymon's gang.
Right.
I guess he's trying to recruit him or trying to get him to join his side after he loses both his subordinates. So, I mean, we'll see where this thread goes. I think that was it.
So yeah, overall, I was very pleased with these episodes. I think the standout bit at least for me, for the episode 23 was both the locale, having the fight set on a boat. Just feels different enough. Like, I don't really, if you quiz me on it, I really can't think of other Sentai or even really that many Toku fights that happen on boats or on ships, like as a locale. So that was just interesting to see, just different settings and seeing them interact with that environment in different ways. And then I think the monsters cooking and the cooking challenges, particularly Ushibarak when he's using his safe powers or his collection powers to like heat up the meat and season it really fast and all that stuff.
Oh yeah,
and then
that's right.
When Toma's cooking goes full Yakutate Japan and the monsters eat it and are transported into these, it's just apoplectic, just visions of other worlds, and the taste is just sending them other places. That's a trope that I really don't get tired of. Yeah,
I am into the cooking. I always welcome cooking battles and stuff I'm watching. So to get a live action version of it, I think it was great because like you see him sort of prep the food a certain way, and he's like roasting it like in front of himself using his powers, and then you see it and it's like monster food. Like it's not even like
right.
I don't want to eat that. I don't want to eat that. No, thank you. So that's that was a fun one. I liked that a lot. I especially liked when he was baiting them out. They had it was in a cooking class or something, and he was what's his name? Ushibarak was kidnapping professional cooking teachers. It's like, gee, I wonder which one is gonna be the gangler here, and it's like the guy wearing like the furry vest and cross on the back of his shirt.
Yeah. Yeah, so I like that one and a little bit of friendship angle. And then just kind of it leading into... It was nice to have both Emperor X paired with the Lupin Kaiser in 23 and then with the Pat Kaiser in 24.
Mm-hmm.
And I think 24 was probably this... I don't know if I would say the stronger of the two. There was definitely more of an... It felt like there was more of an emotional angle to it. Even though Pat Pink and Lupin Red didn't necessarily get as much time together. The time they did have together felt like it had a lot more meaning, especially getting a look into Pat Pink's past in terms of her being raised by her grandfather, and having to be more sort of self-reliant and a little bit past, because if memory serves, all we've really gotten background-wise for her is the stuffed animal sort of angle, which was a nice way to sort of soften her, because she's usually the competent, strong, kind of independent type at work. So seeing her like, okay, well, she kind of lets her guard down in this like one hobby area. But here we got to see a little bit of the origin of why she's like that, why she's so kind of determined, and why she seems so much more capable than Green and Red. So that was nice to see. And an interesting thing that just kind of crossed my mind. So, and maybe it's been a while since I don't remember, but it's interesting that in 23, Lupin X is much more casual with changing in the middle of a fight. Like with the Lupinrangers, he's going back and forth between Lupin and Patranger mode. Whereas when he's fighting with the Patrangers, he's only Patran X. Like he's never Lupin X when he's with them, which I'd forgotten that detail that the Lupinrangers knew about it.
Right.
But I liked in the fight, he just had this kind of casual like shoot to the side, suddenly I'm a different form, like just kind of going back and forth. I really dug that. I thought it was quite interesting.
Yeah, I'm Still not 100% sure how to read Noel besides the fact that, I mean, he loves, or he's responsible for the Lupin collection, and then that Good Striker is sort of allied with him more so than anybody else, it feels like. Like he could order Good Striker around and he'll do what he says.
Yeah. I definitely feel like the fight choreography was strong in both these episodes. There was, I think 23, the big standout was there's some acrobatics that were pretty good, but really there was this one long shot where Ushibarak was just getting like knocked back over and over and over again by each member of the team. It was a really, really good long shot that I love that kind of choreography and the effort it takes.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And then just the whole battle in the warehouse in 24. There's a lot going on. I guess the thing that I would use to describe it is there was a lot of lateral movement. Like there was definitely a progression of the fight from the opening of the door across the warehouse, and you got a sense that Pink and Red were pushing him further down as he dodged, and they kind of had ended up in their own space, which isn't, that kind of spatial awareness isn't always present in Sentai fights. I mean, we joke about how often you get punched and land on a beach. Like that kind of distance is usually not relevant, and it's very loosey-goosey, but this time it felt like they were really fighting him across the warehouse, and I appreciated that.
Yeah. I mean, conversely, we had something like that in episode 23 where Toma Lupin Blue gets attacked out of costume on the boat. And he kind of grabs his collar, and then suddenly they're outside. Like, they didn't break any walls or any of the car. They didn't kick around any styrofoam boxes or rocks to get out there. They just, boom, like, all right, yeah, sure. I mean, we're used to it, but, like, you guys didn't even, like, pretend to break up the wall of a boat here.
Yeah, that was a surprise. It was also nice having a 3-man monster team.
Yeah.
And having them be oppositional to... I'm going to say oppositional. They were certainly not supporting the Dawn. They had their own aims and kind of have their own agenda, which was... Again, I'm still over here asking for like what is the ultimate mafia agenda here other than just be bad guys. But it was nice just to have that extra dynamic.
Right.
So I appreciated that.
I really liked something that stood out to me this one, and maybe it's just because it's been a little while since we were last watching, but the effects that they had for Lupin X, Patranger X's ground attacks, like his on the ground super moves, especially the one that he was using as Patranger X, because it just looked really sharp, like kind of like a circle of twinkling blades that kind of come together in the attack.
Yeah.
That was nice. I was like, oh, yeah, I really, really dig that one.
Yeah, that was a really cool attack, especially combined with the 3-way Patranger mode where they're all combined together.
Yeah,
always good stuff to see that double super attack.
Mm-hmm. Just nice.
So, was there anything else we wanted to say on this one, or do we want to jump into Twitter questions?
I guess excited to see where they go or what they do with this Limon dude, and then if Cowboy Absolute Zero is going to get, like, really, we're going to see a whole lot more of them or not. I mean, that's all. I enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to when we get back into.
Yeah, anyway. Definitely. I'm in the same boat. I want to see how this little 3-parter ends because I'm hooked. I'm ready.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Twitter question wise, so this is coming to us from David Skazny, and he asks, okay, so 3-part question here. The introduction of the Lyman Gang in this arc really highlighted how underutilized the Ganglo Generals are to me. No argument here. Destro, Gauche, and Cowboy Absolute Zero all seem like they have cool things happening in the background, but the slow burn the show has been taking as to what those things are is probably the biggest flaw currently. The Lyman Gang's more upfront style was a nice change of pace, and I'm kind of disappointed they are all basically one-and-dones. First question is, do you prefer villain generals that are built up for a cool payoff fight in the in-game, but that run the risk of just standing around for most of the show, or those that are constantly in conflict with the team but run the risk of constantly jobbing, which jobbing being a wrestling term there for those that don't know, someone who's made to look someone else look good. And then, so let's go ahead and answer that. So how do you feel? I mean, I just got done saying a few seconds ago that I feel like we need a motivate. Like, we don't even have the broadest motivation. Even Cobra Commander who never put together a decent plan in his life. His plan was to take over the world. You know, he had some overarching goal. And other than the fact that we know these are mobsters, so, you know, crime, ? We don't really know anything about what they're after. We still, like, clearly they have an aim that involves the Lupin collection, but not the same one, because they already have the pieces.
Right.
So, you know, so, like, what is their intent with them, other than to just keep them and sit on them like Smaug the Dragon? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. And so, I think, you know, no matter which way we go with this question, I would like to have some explanation of what they're after other than crime. So,
crimes.
At least that goes for me. Criminaling. So the actual question though was, do we like the long burn or the short term, basically, for the villains?
I think I kind of prefer the long burn. If they can show that they're worth waiting for, which we've sort of gotten a glimpse of, like whenever Destra decides to actually fight, or Ghost decides to get her hands a little bit dirty, they kind of clean up, especially with the Dawn, when the Dawn like was like, all right, let me give me a second, and he just, like, without being a giant, he just wiped the floor, and he's like, you guys aren't ready yet, like that kind of, like, if they do a little bit of that, a little bit of taste of what they'll need to face later, I think that works for it. But maybe a little bit more than what we've been getting.
Yeah, I mean, I think most... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
But you're right, that motivation does a lot to drive them forward, even if they don't necessarily do anything.
Yeah, I think most shows, especially in this OOV, do something with cryptic messages like, "Muhaha, we're moving into phase 3 already," and you're like, "What's phase 3? What?" You know, just some kind of, you know, offhand mention of a bigger plot, I think, would do the show. I think it would take very little screen time, and I think it would help the villains a lot. But I tend to prefer something of a, I don't want to be that guy that just takes the middle, but I tend to prefer sort of mini arcs, your sort of jobber villains, I guess, to a degree, but the ones that last for, you know, 5 or 6 or 10 episodes, just long enough to be around and you know them, but they're not really a part of the end game, and they usually have some kind of tragic backstory, and you sort of see them sort of rise and fall within the context of the rest of the show. And you kind of look back on them and go like, oh, wow, you know, the heroes overcame that, and oh, how tragic it was that they died, or whatever. I tend to like that, where they last long enough to make an impact, but they're not necessarily the driving force of the entire show. That tends to make their motivations and the consequences and the stakes much more personal, and I find that really engrossing. Just because, you know, when you're the main character or the main villain, you kind of have to have... You know, your main hero has to be a bit of a blank slate with a very broad mission. The villain has to be this, you know, very larger than life, and has to have a very, you know, broad purview too. So side characters are where most of the time the writing staff gets to really focus in and like, okay, we're going to talk about this story or talk about this kind of idea. So I tend to like that. The smaller-ish villains, the mini bosses, if you will. I find them much more interesting. And I think we get a little bit of that sometimes. We've almost gotten it more with the mini bosses than with the boss himself. Like we had that one bit with Gauche and the Wolf Boys, like when she met them in the forest or whatever and was like helping them, and the implication was that the boss didn't know anything about it, that kind of thing.
That's right. Yeah.
I like that kind of stuff. I like the little mini arcs, and I like to see them, you know, like to see it just kind of be a part of the show, but not the whole show.
Gotcha.
How about yourself? I know you said the long game. Never mind. I'm sorry. I talked for a long time and I forgot. And then second, he asked, what are some of your favorite evil general characters, Sentai or otherwise? So that's the second question. So what are some of your favorite evil generals? 7 legendary swords and that sort of thing.
So we're talking evil generals. This isn't like the final boss. This is like subordinate level. Is that what we're thinking? Like not quite the final boss, but like...
Right.
I don't. If you have one already ready to go, you could go.
I do. I mean, and of course, I'm gonna be super basic and go with an easy pick. But Grifforzor and Lamy from Zyuranger. We would know them as Goldar and Scorpina from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Just because, you know, in MMPR they didn't run with this at all. But in the original Zyuranger, they were basically they were a couple. And monster couples is something that I think is an awesome trope, especially because they don't really, like, they just really enjoy being bad guys together.
Yeah.
being an evil couple, and I think that's just kind of a really great shtick, and I just really enjoyed that, watching them fight together and just kind of be ruthless, and also just they're a couple. I don't know, I think that's always a fun it's just a fun bit to have that sort of sub relationship, because I mean you're used to seeing these general / subordinate type characters at each other's throats all the time, vying for power, who's the real right hand to the boss, that kind of stuff. So to see them just kind of be more of a they're a team, but they're not twins, so to speak, because a lot of times you get those generals that are they're twins, or they're a set. They're just two different monsters that happen to be, in a relationship and also like to fight the heroes. So I dig that.
That's tough. I'm
dip into Kamen Rider.
I think, like we've said before, my experience with Sentai isn't as thorough as my experience with Kamen Rider, and so I'm looking for Kamen Rider examples in my head. I'm having trouble because structurally it's not typically that way. Like, it's not usually with the generals. But what I will say is that I very, very much liked those episodes of Jetman that we watched, and the generals that showed up in that, because that counts, right? Those are,
I assume so.
Yeah. So sort of the space lords or whatever. I can't remember what they're called right now. I'm sorry. But they were the right amount of weird and imposing for me. And I would say if I was going to commit any more time to anything, it would probably be to see more of their nuttiness.
Yeah, definitely. Also, I mean, shout out to Gintoku in Kamen Rider Build, because, man, Kamen Rider Rogue, that's good stuff. That's real good stuff. And third, he asked, what traits do your favorites have that set them apart? Basically, what makes a good bad guy in your eyes?
Oh. I guess I'm going to go with the weirdness. I want them to have really strong personalities, but also be able to not just be kind of punching bags, or not to be jobbers in this case, since that's relevant. So to have personalities, but not just be completely stiff, or not, or just jobbing every time we see them, right?
Right. I guess for me, I think the advantage of a villain, with a hero, you have to. I shouldn't say you have to. Typically, for a hero, you try to make them a little more textured. You don't make them too extreme. You try to give them different facets. But with a villain, you have the opportunity to just take a theme or an idea and just run it to its absolute most ridiculous conclusion, right? You can go to extremes because they're not meant to necessarily be relatable, not all the time anyway, especially in this style of fiction. So I just want a villain that exemplifies a theme and has something going for them and carries it to its conclusion, usually in opposition to the hero's main themes or whatever. The hero's out for to avenge a fallen friend or something. Well, then have a villain that is just absolutely bloodthirsty vengeance, just to the extreme, and the hero has to go, am I willing to go that far? Okay, well, if I think that's too far, where's my line, and why do I feel like I'm different than this villain who is nominally following the same thing as me? Where do I draw that distinction and that sort of thing? Anything that makes the heroes kind of challenge and question themselves and that sort of thing, I think is great. And especially if it ends tragically. If you can have a villain end tragically so that you feel just a little bit for them, I mean, that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, that was something I was reflecting on looking at Drive recently. In the end, whatever, the heroes win somewhat. But there were characters that I sympathized with a little bit near the end, and I was just his goal was to eradicate all of humanity, but it would have been nice if they could have been friends. It's he's an evil monster that wants to kill everybody, but if only. That weird sort of mixed feelings in the end, right? That's
yeah,
you're getting at, yeah.
Yeah, that's the key. You have to just make it go ooh, maybe I don't want to cheer this 100%. Okay, but that was all the questions that we had. Thanks, David, for those questions. Those were really, even though we only had one person asking this week, they were all really good questions. So,
yeah, strong questions.
All right, well, I think that's it for this week of the Super Senpai Podcast. Now, if everything goes according to plan, knocking on every piece of wood available, next week we should have our special guest on. We have it lined up. We have it scheduled.
Yes.
Looking to record. Very excited about it. But we don't want to say, because we don't want to jinx it still.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I am excited about that episode.
Yeah, this is gonna be really fun. It's gonna be sort of a different take. Hopefully we pull this one off. But yeah, thanks for coming to hang out with you guys. Yeah, thanks for coming to hang out with me, man.
No problem, man. It was good to be back.
Thanks for tuning in to the Super Senpai Podcast. We'll notice you again next time.
Super Senpai Podcast.